Part of a Seattle City eviction moratorium that allowed tenants to self-certify that they suffered hardship during the pandemic was thrown out by a judge because it was not legal. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have good news for landlords up in Seattle. As part of the city's eviction moratorium was thrown out by a judge. It simply put was found not to be legal. It was a little bit ridiculous, honestly, right? And the state of New York, they actually had a similar problem with their whole state eviction moratorium. They got thrown out by the Supreme Court. So what they were doing was they were allowing the tenants to self-certify without any evidence whatsoever that they had suffered a hardship throughout the whole pandemic, and therefore they needed protections from the eviction, So the problem with that is no evidence needed to be given, and there was zero way for a landlord to challenge that. Okay, so basically, if there was a way for a landlord to challenge that, then it would have been a little bit more fair. A landlord could have said, hey, I see the tenant has a brand new car. I see that the tenant has, big screen TV. I see the tenant going to work every day in uniform. Yet they are claiming that they're facing a financial hardship and that I can't evict them. Why? And yet there's no way they could tell the court that. There's no way that they can actually file eviction against this tenant because the tenant is saying, but I'm facing a hardship, even though it's a 100% lie. So yeah, it's a completely ridiculous situation, and they threw out that part of the law. Unfortunately, they didn't throw out the whole eviction moratorium. The whole thing is illegal. And I mean, small victory, but small is better than none in my opinion. Now, before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know, what do you want to see on this channel? I'm still working. I'm bringing you great articles about, the eviction moratorium, rent control, good cause eviction protections, any story that's really of interest to landlords. I'm going to be out of town for the next week or so, and I'm really, gonna be brainstorming just so I can bring you the best material when I get back. So, this article is coming from the Seattle Times, and it says, Court strikes down part of Seattle law meant to help tenants avoid eviction. All right, let's get into it. Maybe they'll be able to explain it a little more clearly than I did. The Washington State Court of Appeals has struck down a city policy meant to reduce evictions after the end of Seattle's eviction moratorium. An ordinance the Seattle City Council passed in May 2020 said tenants who fell behind on rent and faced eviction could, for 6 months following the end of the moratorium, assert a defense in court if they self-certified they suffered financial hardship and couldn't pay rent. The city leaders pointed to the rule as one key to the city's emergence from a nearly 2-year ban on almost all evictions, as they allowed the eviction moratorium to expire on February 28th. Mayor Bruce Harrell and Seattle City Council members cited a suite of city tenant protections, including the 6-month rule, as ways of helping vulnerable tenants stay housed as evictions resumed. So, for some reason, the city of Seattle, after a 2-year moratorium on evictions, thinks that tenants still need some sort of protections because 2 years wasn't long enough. They're still suffering. Well, yeah, they're going to continue to suffer as long as you have, Big Brother, the government, sitting there telling them that they don't have to pay rent, that someone else is going to be paying it for them, that someone else is going to be taking care of them. They're going to make sure that they never go out and go try to find a job. They're going to make sure that they never go and find a place they can actually afford to pay the rent at. Why should they? They've got, the Big Brother taking care of them. They've got the Seattle City Council telling them they can't be evicted. They've got landlords who have to pay out of their own personal pockets these other people's rent. They expect someone else to take care of them forever. That's pure socialism right there. This is garbage, okay? Complete, total garbage. And the Seattle City Council only is making things worse by dragging it out and then throwing this additional 6 months of protection. And all they have to do is self-certify that they're still facing hardship, with no way for landlords to challenge it, no way to prove that, that what they're saying isn't a complete and total lie, okay? So yeah, I'm glad that the state court of appeals threw this out. Even in a state like Washington, they see, hey, this is nonsense. This doesn't make any sense, and we just can't allow this to pass. I wish they had thrown out the whole thing, though. Okay, if this could get all the way up to the Supreme Court, I am 99% sure that it would be thrown out. But it's probably not going to get there, and all these protections will end a long time before the challenge would ever get that far. In a written decision Monday, the Court of Appeals upheld other city protections, but said the 6-month eviction defense deprives landlords of their property interest without due process by not affording them the opportunity to test the veracity of tenants' self-certification of financial hardship. The lawsuit also challenged the city's ban on evictions during winter months and a law allowing tenants to repay pandemic debt in installments. King County Superior Court judge last year upheld all but one small portion of the laws. The Court of Appeals affirmed that lower court ruling, but added the decision against the 6-month rule. So yeah, the Court of Appeals still believes that it's wrong that landlords can evict people during the winter. Can you believe how ridiculous that is? No evictions during the winter. That is legal, but no. See, this is my problem with all of these extreme policies, right? It gets to the point where, hey, we're going to make it impossible, just 100% impossible for landlords to evict at all. So what is the solution to this? You know, what does a landlord do when they're in a place where evictions are darn near impossible? Well, I've already seen it. I've seen it in places like California and New York where it is very, very hard to get rid of tenants, right? They have to pay them. They have to pay the tenants to leave. Okay? They have to pull money out of their pockets and say, hey, you know, here's $10,000, here's $20,000, here's $50,000. In some cases, to get rid of rent-controlled tenants in places like San Francisco, they're paying 6 figures, $100,000 plus. Basically, buying the unit back from the tenant. Just to get rid of a tenant, you're paying 6 figures out of pocket to get rid of them. That is how bad it has become. The tenants are that entitled and that protected that you cannot get rid of them unless you are paying 6 figures. Can you imagine? I mean, as a small landlord here in the Midwest, I can't. But you know, it makes business sense in a place like San Francisco, because when you buy that property, right, and you can't make any money because the tenants are paying such low rents and they can't be evicted for any reason, then you're left with no choice. All right, but yeah, I mean, let's get back to this article. The Rental Housing Association of Washington, which represents landlords and sued the city over the rental regulations, said in a statement, "We are grateful for the court's decision, which stops the cycle of debt for housing providers and residents trapped in Seattle's ongoing COVID-19 eviction ban. The city attorney's office did not immediately say whether it plans to seek a review of the case from the state's highest court. We are assessing the implications of today's ruling and exploring our options, including whether to seek review by the Supreme Court," spokesperson Anthony Derrick said. Yeah, they claim to have ended the Seattle eviction moratorium on February 28th, but then they put these additional protections in place for an additional 6 months. So honestly, it was a lie. It was a lie. Just like, you know, when they say, "Oh, hey, our eviction moratorium is over." Officially, it is over, but unofficially, with all these additional protections in place, it never ended. Okay, it's continuing on through the summer, through all the way until next winter, when landlords won't be able to evict again. Okay, you see why this is a huge problem. Okay, you've got tenants up there, and I wonder how many tenants right now in Seattle haven't paid rent in over 2 years and are continuing not to pay. And I wonder, you know, if you know a landlord, or if you've seen an article or something that where a landlord hasn't received rent in over 2 years and going on 3 years at this point, send it to me. I want to know. I want to hear these stories. I want to share these stories with the people watching these videos, because simply put, people, they don't believe it's true. They're like, well, there's no way that a tenant would do that to a landlord. Yes, there is. I've brought you these articles. I've shown, I have to show these articles because no one else is talking about them. Okay, you go to these sites and they're like, oh, look at these tenants, oh, they're being evicted. They're like, no, I don't care nothing about these tenants being evicted. If you've been in a place for 2 years not paying rent, then the problem is you. It's not the landlord. The problem is you as the tenant. You're a bad tenant and you need to go.